Right, last class, right? Exciting. So I realized that all my classes this week I've forgotten to introduce myself, so I'm going to do that now. If you're in any of my classes, now you can retroactively know who I am. My name is Desiree Mackey. I'm a structural engineer. I work for Martin Martin in Denver, Colorado. We're a company that does a million different projects from very, very tiny to very, very large, which for me is really exciting because as I moved sort of away from traditional design engineering and project management into more of a BIM manager role, I still have my hands in a huge range of structures, which is really interesting to me. So I'm excited and kind of blinded in being part of the live streaming today. I'm a little nervous because they say the camera adds 10 pounds, or in my case, added a baby. Hopefully the other presenters didn't have the same problem. Be like, oh shoot, I went to Vegas. Oh. So, all right, so this is the last session. It's intended to be tips and tricks, lots of picks and clicks, random things. I am a structural engineer, so some of the examples are going to be structural, but a lot of them are general too. And I'd like to encourage you, although this is a large group, but I think, especially since it's the last class of the day, I think we could have some fun with it. So if you want to jump up and offer a tip of your own, maybe you think of something off of what I said, you want to extrapolate, or maybe add something to what I've said, jump up to one of these microphones, I'll see you, and you can add one of your own tips. I've got a whole list of things to get through. If we don't get through them all, they're all in the handout, they're all in the PowerPoint that you can download and you can look at them later. I also have a list on the back page of the handout of all, like a whole bunch of other things that I was like, there's no way I can do this in an hour. So there's a ton of content, and we'll see what we get through. So I had a hard time writing the learning objectives for this class because my goal was, I don't know, how many, I see a lot of green ribbons, but for those of you that haven't been, or that those of you who have been to AU before, or maybe another conference, for me, maybe you agree, when you go to a presentation, you can get a lot of great things out of it, but sometimes what you really remember is that like one little golden nugget of information. And so my goal here was to just provide one golden nugget after another, and maybe one you already know, or maybe one doesn't apply to you, but I'm hoping that every one of you walk out of here with something you can use. So that's kind of the main goal, is to walk out with something exciting. All right, so this is my first tip. I'm going to jump back and forth between PowerPoint and Revit here, so hopefully that doesn't cause any issues too much. So here's my first one. I was really excited about this when this came out in 2015, and then 2016 also. We can now tag or include in our tags for foundations and floors the top of footing or top of slab elevation, right? How many people loved that? Nobody? Okay. Jeez, come on, enthusiasm, people. Get ready for that party. So this was great. First thing I did, got in there, edited the tags, added those elevations, and then we started putting them in projects, and we started seeing this. My spot elevation is 88, and my tag says 98. Why is that? So the problem is that somebody moved your project base point unclipped. Revit has sort of a, I call it the internal coordinates, a third coordinate system. It's the original project coordinates. So if you change those, if you move the coordinate system separate from your building, you've now broken that relationship. And for some reason, these tags reference that original place. So here, I'll show you this in action. So here I have foundation. Here's just a spot elevation, the top of footing, and here's the tag. Now, if I do what you should not do and grab the project base point and I change its elevation, all your levels and everything are going to look correct. They're going to be the right relative distance from that project base point, but all of your structural tags that have elevations in them will be wrong. So if you're a structural engineer, be aware of this. If you are somebody who works with a structural engineer, be aware of how you move your project around in the coordinates. Don't create a situation where the only way to make the levels and the elevations read correct is by moving that base point unclipped. There are ways around this. If you get stuck, email me, I will help you. Because in the last year, we've had so many projects have this problem because we never had to worry about it before, and now we did. Okay? Next one. This one's probably pretty basic, but I really like using the symbolic lines in opening tools. because this way, well, it's two reasons. One, because I'm lazy with the shaft openings. I just kind of draw it and don't worry about where the top and bottom is, and then all I can see when I finish is the X, and I can find it. But also because then you have the X on all your plans. So you don't have to now go back in with the lines and draw on every single plan where your opening is. Everybody familiar with this? Yeah? I'll show you. So here's a shaft opening. And inside the sketch, after you've drawn your boundary line, or I'll draw another one over here, you can switch to symbolic line, and you can draw little lines. And finish. So now, as you go to other levels, the X is there. This one's for everybody. So I love the excuse me, copy and paste align tools. It works for a lot of things. I can copy and paste from a linked file. I can copy and paste from levels, from views, or just really just anything. So that shaft opening, or let's do the slab in fact. So if I were to, was it on level 2? I'll get rid of that. Let's delete it from level 2. All gone. All right, so now I have level 2, no slab. So if I go back to level 1 and I want the slab in the exact same place, I can say copy to clipboard, go to my level 2, and paste a line to my current view. So we'll put slab in the exact same place. I like this for repetitive buildings, right? So you can model all your floor framing and your floors, select everything, and copy it up a whole bunch of levels. And in that case, you can say, paste a line to selected levels, and you can pick in the list and hold down Control and pick all of them, and you just build your building. Okay. You guys aren't super excited? Nothing exciting yet? Gave this presentation at work, and there was like applause 3 times. Usually people are falling asleep when I talk. All right, so this one I like because I like math, and if you've been to any of my presentations ever, I probably cannot give a presentation without some sort of math in it. And this is not only a time saver, but just kind of makes things easy for you. And this is one of those things that makes me want to like take the keyboard from somebody when you're helping them. You're like, just press the... Okay, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so for example, this is the most random file ever. Sorry, but it has purpose, I promise. All right, so if I wanted to move this column over, let's say, or maybe I want to copy it over, either way, anything that you're going to give a value, it can be literally you're giving it a value or you're defining a value by clicking twice. You can say, oh, I need it over 7 foot 6 inches. So you can go 7 foot dash 6 inches. I apologize to the metric folks. One thing that I found out, you also, instead of putting the inch mark, you can actually put 2 apostrophes. That works too. But that is a lot of like the shift button, and it's both sides of the keyboard, and that's just doesn't work for me. So what you can do is you can go 7-6, that's the same thing, or 7 space 6, that's the same thing. Or you could put some sort of math, like equals 25 divided by 2. Whatever, which is not 7 foot 6. Minus 5, now it is. Okay, so you guys just want to catch me in a math error now, don't you? Oh, go ahead. A microphone, so they can hear you at home.
Desi, pick the column on the right so that you get a temporary dimension. Pick the 2 foot 6 and make it negative 2 foot 6. And it flips on the opposite side of whatever your reference dimension is.
That's a good one. That's a good one. With these temporary dimensions, yeah, way to break the ice. These temporary dimensions you can also change, right? So you can toggle them. If you click on them, they'll go left, right, or center. You can also move them. Like I don't care about the dimension to the grid. I care about the dimension to the column, which happen to be the same dimension. So you can move those around.
I got
Go for it.
thing. You mentioned, sorry to the metric folks.
Yeah.
One thing that's cool, though, is when you do put in a value there, you can actually do that unit conversion.
You totally can, because we have a job right now in metric so I've been working in metric for a few weeks, and I've been doing that. You actually can. I hope this actually works. You could put like 12.
And then, yeah, you just put
12
millimeters
millimeters.
and
That would be
meters,
really
and
small. Let's do
it'll
120
do that for you.
millimeters. And it'll change it. It converts it for you. That's a really good one. Now, could you mix a formula and units? I'm not going to try, because I have no... Well, we could try it, but how would we check it? Somebody get out a calculator and convert it for me. But, well, we'll see if it yells at us. How about that? Okay, so we'll say, we'll do something I know. 25.4 millimeters times 12 plus 1 foot. Oh, I need it equals. Equals. That was impressive. All right. So I learned something in my own class here. Okay. Well, so I've done. I've got my golden nugget. I'm out of here. Okay, this is a good one too, and this has gotten better. I would say it was, I'm not going to say not worth it, but not as useful prior to 2015 release 2. It's better now. I like this eTransmit mostly for sending something out of house. I don't like it. I have some people in the office that use it for internal purposes. I don't love it for that because what it produces is it's a completely stripped down file that saves you a whole bunch of steps, but it's sort of a file in limbo. It's the best way I can describe it. It's not a central file, but it wants to be a central file, and it doesn't know what to be until you open it. And I'm okay with that when I send it to my client because they need to open it anyway. But if I save it off onto my server, although it works and we haven't seen any problems, it just doesn't feel warm and fuzzy to me. So I like this for external. So the way this works, oops, do that again. I'll just close this for a minute. Sure. And I'm working in a local file on purpose, so I really hope nothing crashes. But what you can do, of course, it's not loaded. Awesome. Nice work. Okay. Let's see. What can I do? Do you guys want to see this live, or do you want me to explain this? Because I can probably show it to you live. I just have to get into... I'll just show it to you here for the sake of time. But I'm on the wrong computer for the actual add-in. But on your add-in tab, this is a subscription product, so you can just download it. It comes in on your add-in tab. Yeah, add-ins. And it looks like this, transmitted model. This is confusing. I have 3 things I'm trying to do stuff with. All right. So it comes in. That is really hard to see. Okay. The transmit model right there. And then this is the dialog box you get. So it'll save these properties too. So if you're working on one project, for the most part, you can do this one time, set it, stay down here to save it, and you can do it one time. So you can't have a project open, just have Revit open. Then you say where you want the model to, what model you want, where do you want to save it, and then what do you want to do. So you can include your linked files or not, and it'll unload them. Not unload them, unload them, but it'll still be linked. So you have to reload when it gets there, but it doesn't remove them. If you say you don't want to include them, it will not package up your linked files with your file, and it'll unload the links, but it still won't remove them. So if you like to remove the links, you have to still get into the project. It'll remove views. It will purge unused. It's a single purge, not a triple purge or a quadruple sometimes, which is what it takes. But it does get the bulk of it. And you can remove sheets, or any combination really thereof. So what you can do is in a few minutes, toggle your settings the way you want, and then save off a detached copy of your file to send out. And if you have like an FTP situation or maybe Dropbox where you have a file location where you're saving that and that's all you have to do to send the file, you could send it right there and eliminate the step of then copying and pasting or moving it. Anybody use this? Good, good. Okay. All right, so how many of you love the text editor? It's fabulous, right? Does everything you want it to do? Okay. All right, so it doesn't, but it does have some better features now in the last several releases. And this is one of those, I heard a coworker say to me, oh man, I wish I could do a numbered list in Revit. I'm like, well, they kind of suck, but you can do it. So you can. So I'll show you one more time. Get back in my local file. Okay, so if I put in a little text box here, try to make it big enough. So maybe we're going to do some sort of note. And then you want this to be a numbered list. So you have numbers and whatever. So item 1, whatever. So the downside of these is that there's no like sub-numbering. So if I tab, it just tabs over, right? Doesn't work. And then you can't like skip a line. If you want to go down a line and then do another, now you're starting over at 1 and you can't really. And then I had somebody suggest, well, what if you do a shift enter? Let's see. Oh, that was the thing. So you can't also, like, you want to have a second line, right, without the 3. But if you do a shift enter, it'll be indented on that next line down. And I was like, that's awesome. That's great. And so I was like, okay. Next text. Let's see if this. I haven't tested this in 16, so maybe it'll work. Look what it did. You're like, oh. You're like, yes, Revit. Oh, no. So, like I said, they're not awesome, but they are there. And this tab dimension, that default dimension between the numbers and the text, is in your text type property. So if you have a really big tab dimension, just go into your edit type down here in this tab size. You can change that. So they do exist, but they just do have limitations. So when I gave this presentation at work,
Ask a quick question.
Great. Go ahead.
With the text, has anybody ever come across where you can set the wipeout boundary around the text really tiny? Like so that if you're wiping out text, you're only wiping out text, not a big band around the text. Is that something doable?
Does anybody off the top of their head know the answer to that?
No.
Right here, that's where I was going. That was my first inclination, so you can change that. I don't know how close to the text it gave me. You can put 0 in. Oh, it won't let you do 0? That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know if that's really that close to the text. I don't know if that quite gets you there, but it's close. Transparent text and no, that'd be bad. Don't do that. I take it back. Undo. Okay. So, any other on that one? Sorry, that was kind of a fail. But that's the good thing about this, right? We can have things that are great, things that are bad, things that are not quite there, but we can talk about it. All right, so when I first did this presentation, I crowdsourced some of these tips and tricks from the people in my department because I didn't want it to be all the things that I thought was great. I wanted it to be the things that they thought was great. And so a lot of these actually came from my coworkers. Hey, this is what I do all the time. And this one came from our production manager, and we kind of went rounds on how to do this because I didn't really like his idea. But in the end, with some tweaking of how to actually execute it in Revit, his idea was actually the right one. So props to him. But he wanted a way to, we have these designer notes. Does anybody have these? They're little designer notes. Actually, they look much different now. We've changed our standards. They're like big and purple. But when we bring in like a template detail, a reference detail, something that we use all the time, they come in with these designer notes. So they're notes to the engineer saying, hey, you need to, this and this and this need to be sized still, or edit this for your project, or this is current to whatever code, change this value for, stuff like that that you need to know. So we have those, and we what we found is that we didn't want them to come into the details because people were forgetting to delete them, and then they were printing their drawings. So we moved them out of the details, and we put them into the title blocks on the reference detail sheets, and then people would bring in just the detail and not the sheet, and they'd lose the notes. So we wanted to move the notes back into the details and have a way to not have them print. So we essentially wanted like a no plot layer. And what we did was made two text types. And the first is the text type that we have for our actual notes. So it's big and purple now. And we have two kinds of these. We have the designer notes that come in on our reference details, and we have one that's just comments. Like if you're on a call or something and you want to write a comment, or you want to comment to one of the other people working on the project and say, hey, adjust this or move this over, change this elevation, whatever, you don't want to do it, you just want to make a note. We have something like that too, and I'll show you in a second. Then the next text type is this, and this actually says the exact same thing that this says. Well, I guess it says invisible instead of visible, but it's the same size. So the idea was, he's like, well, why don't we just change the text to white? And I was like, well, because white will print it black. It's not going to work. So what we did is change it to a very, very light gray. It's very, very small and really compact. And if you print it, if you typed a whole bunch and you print it and you hold it up to light and kind of do, it looks a little bit like a watermark, but you can't see it. So the workflow for this one, I have some over here. So here's our red comments, is that you would find one place before you print, find one place that you have one, do a right-click, select all instances, and then change it to the one that is hidden. And it looks like that. And you can't see them. Oh, there's 3. So then you could print, and then you could do one of two things. You could undo, or what I typically do, because like I know there's one here, find it, or you could just put in another piece of the, what was it, comments? Hidden, put something in there, and then it's still selected, and then do a right-click, select all instance. Oh, shoot, I just lost it. Now, here's a foreshadowing. Select previous. Select all instances in entire project. Or theoretically, if you just placed one, you would know kind of where it was. Select all instances, entire project, and change it back to the visible. So you do have some amount of work and remembering and kind of undoing, but it's a way to maintain those designer notes and have people not just delete them without reading them if you use them, or comments or anything like that. Anybody else have a method for something like that they're doing in their office? Yep, we have that. I can demo that because we happen to have that too. So we have it's called text blank. But we don't use it for the arrow, so we have everything really small. Oh, I guess it's not too small. Okay, so it's something like that. So I don't know what I typed, just one letter. But you can do something like that. That's a great one. Go ahead. You could build a family that does that. Yeah, but then you'd have to tell people to use it and make sure they are. It doesn't have a dot. You can't see that dot. Here, wait. I have a workaround for that too. Now you really can't see that dot. I mean, come on. Most of the principals can't read the half-size sets, let alone see the... That's what you guys clap at? I really hope nobody at my work is watching this. Okay. And here's our communication. Same idea. So we have these red markups. Okay, this one came from somebody working on one of our stadiums right now. He was really tired of cutting a section for working purposes and having the far clip. The section just is so deep, hundreds and hundreds of feet. And he said that instead of zooming out, panning over and pulling it back in, he found this little property and he didn't think that anybody knew about it. So this is a great one to mention. So if I were to put in a section and say I'm going to, it's not particularly big because, like I said, this is kind of a ridiculous file with random things in it. But if this were a big building, it might go to the very end of the building. And that could be a very large distance, especially if I was zoomed in. It's off my screen. So now I'm doing the zoom out and like, let's just pretend if it went like way over there. So now we're zooming out and panning over. And they're like, oh, there it is. Now I need to kind of get it. And then now I need to do the weird like claw thing where I'm... so here's another side tip. If you drag that off the screen, you can let go. So anything you're moving and need to pan at the same time, if you pull it off the screen, you can let go of the button I'm not holding on and look, it's still. And then you can zoom out, pan over, and change it, which was not the tip, but it made me think of it. That'll work with levels. Have you ever had levels like way out into oblivion, and then you've got to like, and you've got this weird hand cramp by the time. So for that one, so you're going to sidetrack myself. Same idea. So right, you could grab your ends of your levels, pull it till it goes off your screen, let go, and it's still, and then now you can pan wherever you want. Done. Okay, so back to the actual tip. So this section in the properties, and I tried to make this nice and big for the screen there. Right here, this far clip offset, you can change that to something really small, and you'll have a nice thin section without having to go find the back end of your section. No. Sorry. I like try to sugarcoat it. You can if you... It tries to guess... Revit is really great with automation, right? It automates a lot of things and it guesses things for you and it kind of does things for you, but with that you lose some control over it. So what you're losing in control here is that it tries to sort of guess based on the dimensions of your building, the view range of your view, how long did you draw, all those sorts of things, what levels are visible in your view range, and it kind of sizes itself based on what it thinks you want to see. So if you figured out what all those parameters that it considers were, you could maybe get it to default. The question was, can you default that? Maybe if you're an API genius. Say that again? In my view template? Oh, sure. Sure. That was a really great suggestion. If you had a view template for your sections that was set to turn on for all your sections, you could probably set that. Let's double check that that's there. That's a great idea. I don't have one, so I have to say create current view. Sure. Oh. 2. Okay. Far depth clipping. View range. Oh, I got a floor plan. Oh, hold on. Rewind. Okay. I was like, why did I already have one? Again? 2. Ah! 3. Okay. There we go. Let's see. Far clipping. Clip without line. I'm not seeing it. All right, if you guys find that, send me an email, because it's not something I do, so maybe I will, and you taught me something. Yeah, see, this is where you'd have to apply the view template and have it be defaulted on their new sections. I'll mess with that. If you figure it out, and I can email the group. Interesting. Okay, so for everybody else, the tip was if you're working in 2015 or before, which is probably where most of us are, if you have dependent view templates on your sections, it starts to think about that information as you're drawing it. So generating those sections can take a long time, so beware. It's a good tip, thanks. Okay. All right. This is a good one. We could do like 5 hours on this one, right? So schedules, we think of schedules as just something that we put on our drawings, but they're actually a really powerful tool. And what we've started to do is we put some quantity takeoffs on our drawings now, or not, they're not on the drawings. They're in the model just for our knowledge. So we can go and say, how much does this floor weigh? Things like that. That's just for our knowledge. So we're starting to use it as a tool. But here's another thing that I do, and this is sort of a preemptive thing to our QTO schedules because the engineers have to go in and make sure that these properties are set properly before the QTO schedules will populate. So this is just a column schedule. There's 6 columns, 5 columns in here. And there's a couple of properties that are really important for our QTO schedule. So for you guys, this might be different. But one is the material has to be correct. And you can see that for these concrete columns, it's not right. And I could have clicked all over the project and looked at that, but I can very quickly see that here, and I can change it right here. It's going to change all of the types. And then this is a custom parameter that we've created because is anybody else really annoyed that you can't filter schedules by material? Right? So I want a schedule of my steel columns. I don't really care about the concrete right now when I'm talking about the steel weight. So we added this custom parameter, and this one's not filled out. So I can fill out concrete here, and it'll fill it out for all the types. So now I've added information back into the model. Now the other thing to keep in mind so here's our ridiculous model, is that what you're seeing here is not a report, right? It's live linked back to, it's just a different, the model's a database. The model's a database of information, and we work with the graphical database. The schedule is just a list database, essentially. It's something we're probably actually more familiar with. And so when you can click on one of these elements, you're selecting the element in the model. And so if you said, oh, this should be something other than 1490 that I don't have loaded in. Do I have something else in here? Aha. So this one's really supposed to be a 12 by 18. I can change it there, and it changes. So you can work and do a whole bunch of things in schedules that you could do in here. Say you want to change all of your level 2 beams from one size to another. We'll make a schedule based on level, unfilter it so it's one line, and change them all at once. So stuff like that. Anybody use schedules for that? Nice. This one came from a PM in the office who had the BIM manager position. Well, it was the unofficial BIM manager, and then they made an official BIM manager. But he was me before I had the position. And this is what he does. He comes with great ideas because he doesn't have to solve other people's problems anymore. He just solves his own. So this is what he does. And I don't have the file because it's huge and it would take forever to open. But what he does is this is the wrong thing. This is a floor plan, and this is a sheet. This is a sheet view. This is a floor plan on the view. And then the only section cuts you're seeing along the side are these live views. So the only thing on here is a live floor plan and a bunch of live sections around the edges. So he's coordinating different things. So slab edges, brick ledges, wall details, things like that you have to coordinate. So he has his model on and the architect's model on. And he puts this on a sheet view, and then he can print the sheet and do his coordination on a sheet view. Now, obviously, it's not part of his documents, but this is a really clever way to keep all that information current and in one place, and you can check it. And you could even, annotate this and write notes like move slab over, or whatever you need to do. Absolutely. You could do the same thing for column surrounds and a plan view. There's lots of applications to this. So sheets don't have to be for printing. This is clearly a huge sheet, right? I think this is a convention space. So that's not going to fit on one sheet as it is. So, but a sheet view just to compile all these things that he wants to look at once. So you could get a lot faster. Oh, so I had to put this one in here. I didn't put my cell phone number on the slide, but one of my coworkers submitted this as her suggestion for my presentation. And she's like, this is the only tip you need. This is it. Um, and I thought it was really funny. So my point here is that talk to your coworkers, your BIM managers, email me or other experts in the community and crowdsource information, right? We have a community here. Ask other people what they do. And maybe you're not going to do exactly the same thing, but maybe what they do helps you think of an idea. So I don't want you to text me in the middle of the night, but you can email me. Actually, I think my cell phone number is on my card. Okay, so I wish I had like prizes, but does anybody remember what release it was that all of a sudden when we started double clicking in our project it opened the family editor? 13? That's what I thought. Did anybody love that? I see your heads going like this. I mean, it was like every time you wanted to put information in your title block, all of a sudden the title block opened. Every single time, right? Awful. However, how many people love the activating and deactivating views on your sheets with the double click? That one's great, right? So, okay, so here's where you can change that. So in your application menu, which is the big R, you can go to user interface and there's this double click options optimize. I set this in our deployments, so everybody's has our, I think these are our defaults. I don't know if they're different than the actual out-of-the-box defaults, but you can set them in your deployments, you can set them individually. So if you want your users to be able to open the families by double-clicking on them, go ahead and you can change that. But you can turn on and off the handful of double-click options you have. Go ahead.
The big R.
Yeah.
You flip over to Revit real fast if you
Sure.
can. If anybody's ever experiencing where you're placing windows and it starts taking 20 seconds just to place a window or copy a window or move a window or a door perhaps.
You want to go to options?
Yes. Reason for that is the analytical model, and if you go to user interface, yeah, maybe it's on general. I don't remember where it is. No, it's where you turn on and off like the different options.
Settings.
This is just structure.
This is Revit
not,
structure. I was about to tell you that.
If you're working in full-blown Revit, there's a setting that will allow you to turn off structural analysis and tools, and it will go from running 30 seconds to place a window to half a second.
I have Revit on this computer, so we could launch it, but no, I'm in Revit structure. Sorry, I'm a structural engineer. But similar to that suggestion, we do have that in Revit structure just on an individual element basis, this enable analytical instance property. And I tend to toggle that off a lot in slabs and walls. One, because we're not really sending them to analytical, and two, because they tend to cause some errors that really are annoying. Okay. So that's a good comment. It preserves the analytical behavior, but it's just turning it off per user. We're finding that if we toggle that, other people see that it's toggled off, though. The walls of the floors. Okay. But yeah, it still acts. Well, I mean, Revit structure is, that analytical model, I don't think you can really disable, which is probably good. Oh, the big R setting is user specific. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Okay, so the one in Revit is user specific. The one I just showed you is not. That's at least our experience with it. Okay. I love this one. This is like, I don't know. I'm like Marcelo now. I'm getting excited. So view templates came out, and it was cool. But you couldn't really do much with them. They were sort of locked down, and you were sort of stuck, and they got a little bit better, and then this came out. And what I like about this is because I'm always on everybody else's computers, and I don't want to mess with their stuff when I'm troubleshooting their problem. Why isn't my foundation showing up? So when this came out, it solved a lot of my issues. So if I go to, let's go back up to a plan view. And perhaps you want to, this is a printing view because it's a beautiful, beautiful plan. And we want to do a couple of things, but we don't want to mess it up, or more importantly, we don't want to have to remember what view settings we've changed. Come down to this little button here and say enable temporary view properties. Now you don't have to have a view template associated with it. If it does, this becomes really important because everything's grayed out, you can't change it anyway. But even if you don't, which in this case there's no view template, it remembers where you are. And so now I can go to visibility graphics, turn off the walls, my little polygon walls go away, sure. And then maybe I change it to fine level of detail and wireframe and whatever else you want to see. Then you come back and say, okay, I figured out the problem, I fixed it, I'm done, restore. And it puts everything back the way it was, whether or not you had a template. So if you have a view template associated with it, it suspends it. If you don't, it just remembers where you were and then puts it back there. And then in addition, if you have to do something repetitive, like say you're going to go to 10 different views and do the exact same 10 steps, and to do that, you need to turn off the walls and turn on wireframe and do 3 other things, then do what you need to do and put it back. What you can do is make a template, a view template for it, and you can temporarily swap the templates. You could do it manually, right? You can come in and say, pick a new view template, my lovely view templates. Okay, so I'm on 2, and say, okay, well, I want to change it to here, and then do what I need to do, and then change it back. Well, instead, you can say, temporarily apply template properties, pick the other one, say okay, and then when you're done, say restore, and it goes back. So you have a lot of options there. I like that one. Everybody use that? Where you're like, I never knew what that little funny looking button. Who picks these icons? Like, does anybody know what that is? I'm not really sure. Not that I could, I'm an engineer, I just draw, octagons and hexagons and squares. That's it. Okay, so this one's sort of, it's good, but it's turned into more of a finger pointing thing in our office. Like, I didn't edit that. Yes, you did. So you can turn on these like filters based on different work sharing settings. So let's go back to 3D here. So work sharing. So say I want to know who owns what. Well, okay, that's not a good example. Checkout. No. Work sets. It definitely has work sets. Okay, so all of these things are on one work set. And then you can come into your display settings and say, okay, the structural work set is going to be pink. That's really appropriate. And the levels and grids are green. And then you can say checkout. So based on I own it, somebody else owns it, etc. Or updates and changes and such. And so you can just sort of toggle these different views, and based on the colored settings and the little legend, you can figure out who does what, who owns what, etc. And then when you can see now if you've hovered over something, you can see all that information for an individual element. And then you can prove that you weren't the one that deleted the slab. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys this one, but you have to promise me that you will not use it unless you absolutely have to. Okay? You promise? I will search you out and be like, I told you not to do this. I understand the limitations of the dimension tool, and so I'm going to show you a way to get around it, but I also am a firm believer in if it's supposed to be 10 feet, model it at 10 feet. So use with caution, and if you misuse this, I had nothing to do with it. Okay. So here's what you can do. So there's a couple applications for this. So we know we can go in here and override this dimension, right? But we can't override it with another number. And we can't leave it blank. Perhaps we want to leave it blank, and then we want to have an arrow go. Well, you can do my workaround of really, really small text and move it down close to the line. And that's usually what we do. In fact, we have a dimension style that does that and then has an arrow that comes out so we can fill with text. but I understand that you only have so much text you can put in the dimension override, and maybe you want to put a leader in there. So instead of trying to, putting a period, right? This is what we do. Put a period in there. Okay. Instead of doing that, what you can do, right-click in here, say Insert Unicode Control Character, and I like this little separator, and say OK. And it's a blank character. So now you have a blank dimension. Now, I'm not as offended by that. Don't do this, please. 24 feet. So be careful who you share this information with. As I'm saying that, like, hello at home. Shh, don't tell anyone. So there are limitations to the dimension tool. I understand there's times to override it. Don't abuse this, but it is there. Did people know this one? You knew this one? Where you're like, don't show it, don't show it, don't show it. Okay. Oops. Use with caution. All right, so this one's great. What? Thank you. Go ahead. Go back.
As well. You can use an alt code and it will give you a blank space, so you don't even have to have a dot or a different size text. You can just put alt 0129 and it'll give you a blank space.
Alt 0129?
Yeah, and then you don't need to have a really small bit of text or anything like that.
That's good, thanks. Because I've tried that with the right click, it doesn't work in the text box. So alt 0129. Come on up. Oh, that's scary. Apparently it works in sheet views too. You guys are sneaky.
It works for grid numbering if you need to have a
That one I knew, but I have a workaround for that. Email me, I'll tell you what it is. I made a different grid family that I have a workaround. Email me. What's up? Okay, so the comment was when you use the Alt character map shortcuts, you have to use the number pad and not the numbers on the top. I'm a number pad person. I never use the numbers on top, so I've never noticed that. But that's a good tip if that's the case. Okay, all right. So we've got 12 more minutes. Let's see how many more we can get through. So I really like this one, probably because it's formulas, surprise, surprise. But I wish it was an instance property because I feel like the type property is a little bit cumbersome because you can eventually get a lot of dimensions. But this is kind of cool. So come to my other dimension here. All right, so what do we usually do for this, right? We have a blank dimension, right? And then you put a text box over it, or you override the dimension or something like that, and then you type in your text. Is that what people do? Yes? No? Everybody's just staring at me. You're like, I don't call things out like that. Well, instead of doing that, so we have a little, I have a blank dimension style. I could do that, and I could come in here and put a, don't ignore your save warnings. You can put in a text box, which is also blank. We've been doing a lot of blank text today. Note tip. There we go. 3 equal. So this is probably what you see, right? Somebody puts a text box in here and kind of gets it in the right spot. And then you add a beam. And then you change this. And now it looks like that. It has constraints because it has a formula and it knows the, but. So what you can do instead, I'm just going to undo to get back to where we were, is instead of having the quality text, you can do a quality formula. And in the type properties, down at the bottom, hidden where they don't want you to know about it, I guess, you can change this equality formula. And this looks a lot like a tag, if you've made any tags. So you have a couple of options: length of segment, number of segments, number of witness lines, and total length. So you could say 3 equal spaces at 4 feet, or 3 equal spaces at 4 feet equals 12 feet, or something like that. So you can kind of string these together, add prefixes and suffixes, and do whatever you want. And then when you update this, oh, now make it equal again. Now it says 2 equal spaces. So now you're not updating your text and your dimension. So I like these a lot. And then one question I get a lot is that, I really don't want to see this tick mark or something like that. You can turn all those things off. So down here, you can turn off, say I just want to see the tick mark, and you don't have that witness line in the middle. Or you can hide it all, and now it just says that. That might be a little ambiguous, so I kind of liked it better with the witness line, but you see where I'm going. Cool. Anybody using these? 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. That's pretty good. Okay. Well, go home and play with them. Or on the plane on the way home. Annoy the people beside you. Which I did, by the way. On the plane, on the way here, I found out that the person next to me was going to AU. And I was like, oh, I'm going to AU too. And then we got talking, and I told her I was teaching a class, and before I know it, I had my handout out, and I was telling her all my tips and tricks. So I don't know if she enjoyed that or not, and I'm pretty sure the lawyer that was sitting next to her was not enjoying the conversation, but yes. Okay, so this one came out 14, 15? Does anybody know? Select previous? So this is something we've had in other programs, right? So I was writing this class on a weekend, because that's what happens. And I love the select previous. So you ever do this where you go through, and I have no idea why you would select this particular combination of elements, but sure. You select all your elements, and you're like, oh, shoot, I really need to be in 3D for this. Or you accidentally click, or somebody bumps you, and you're like, oh, I lost my selection. Well, you can right-click, select previous. And I'm writing this, and my husband goes, don't you know you can just go control left arrow? And I was like, no, jerk. He's probably watching. Hi. He does that to me all the time. I'm like, look at this awesome tip. And he's like, yeah, and this is a better way to do it. He does, here's another one of his, just to throw it in. He does some really weird stuff. Like, he'll be on the phone, like with the insurance company or something, and he'll be doing this. He'll hold down Control and just hit all of the buttons. Like, what does Control L do? What does Control T do? And then he'll right-click. So he'll select something, and then he'll right-click over here, and then right-click over here. And then he right-clicked this padlock. Who does that? And then he found this button, Show Related. Anybody know this was here? So now you have this dialog box that shows you what that dimension is dimensioning. It highlights it, and it tells you. Who right-clicks the padlock? Like, I do 2 things with that pad, or 1 thing. I click it to lock it, and I click it to unlock it. But yeah, so there's a free one, courtesy of Brian. Okay. This is my favorite way to copy something. And this is not a Revit thing. You can do this in other programs too. Is you can select something, hold down, I don't know why I'm in thin lines. Select something, hold down Control, and press the middle button. And, whoops. Not the middle button. Press the left button, and drag a copy right off. That one's not new. I don't hear any oohs and ahs, so everybody's like, yeah, I knew that. Okay. This one's good, but it kind of lost a little of its ooh and ah with 16, when Revit 16 came out. So this orient to view is good when you have a really big model, which this is not a big model, but you can get the idea, is perhaps you want to, I do this a lot with like braced frames. So I want to adjust a braced frame or move something around, and I like to work in 3D, but the braced frame's right in the middle of the building or something, which is exactly where the architect loves to have it. So you can right-click on the view cube and say Orient to View, and you can find a section or an elevation or something that you have and say, okay, orient this view to that section. And so what it does is, well, orients it to be looking in the same direction as the section, but then it also moves this section box, the extents of that section box, to the extents of the view range or the crop region, or et cetera. So now you've oriented just to what you see in that section. So you can work there. And then to undo it, what I typically do is just toggle on and off that section box, or off and on, I suppose. And you go back to the default, because this is sort of a working thing. It doesn't remember its settings. So that's a little less exciting. Anybody have 16 installed yet? Has anybody not opened 16 yet? Oh, okay. This is going to be your tip. Okay. So what you can do, and you don't have to be in a 3D view. You can be in any view. And say you just, I really want to see these elements in 3D. So what we usually do, select them, go back to your other view, try to figure it out. What you can do now is in 16, hit this little button, and it'll take you to, if you have a default 3D view open, it'll take you to that view, and it will adjust your section box so that you have only what you've selected zoomed in. Right? So undo that. If you're already in the 3D view, just so we can see it a little bit better, it just snaps it like that. Let's see what it does if it's not open. I haven't tested that. It opens it. So it's going to open your default 3D view and take you right to it. Go ahead. That's a great one. So if you select this, the section box in the view and go to one of your other views, it'll become visible and you can edit it. That's a great one. I wish I knew that before I had the section box. You must have been talking to my husband. He does it to me all the time. Go ahead. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. You guys know a lot. Just made this panel. Okay, 2.5 minutes left. All right, so those last two I'll show you at one, or these sheets one, I'll show you at once. You can, instead of, when you move sheets from one view to another, we tend to remove them from the view and then go find them and add them back to the view. Instead of doing that, what you can do, it's not going to let me do that. Okay. So perhaps this plan that's on the second sheet, perhaps I want it on the first sheet. Instead of removing it from there, then going and finding it and adding it here, what you can do is go to the sheet where you want it and just drag it, expand the sheet view, and drag it right from that sheet 2 onto your sheet, and now I've moved it. So you save yourself some scrolling through your project browser. Then the other thing you can do with sheets is you can select, say you have one. Maybe you have, I don't know if you guys use, we use little detail boxes on our details. So you have one that's all set up and everything, and you don't want to keep copy and pasting or creating new sheets. You can copy and paste an entire sheet. This works with other views too, like schedules. So you can right-click on, this is how I like to do it. There's a couple different ways. You right-click on your sheet view, say copy to clipboard, and then you can just click in your working view and do a Control-V or paste from clipboard. And what, let's see, I'll do it again. What I'm doing is creating more sheets. And you can do this with views on your sheets if they're not live, but then you will also duplicate all those views. So I don't know if you want to do that, but if you do, go for it. So that's the copy. The project browser is really powerful. You can select a whole bunch. Somebody was complaining to me the other day about applying a bunch of properties to a bunch of sheets. I'm like, well, just select them all at once and change it at once. They're like, you can do that? Like, yes, you can. So you can't do everything. They're not all properties available. If you select one sheet in the project browser and then you select another one, holding down Control, you'll see some properties go away. But you can get to a lot of things. So you can select a lot of views. You can apply view templates this way for views. I'm almost there. To tab through your windows, you can hold down Control-Tab, and Control-Shift-Tab. This works in other programs. It's similar to what I've been doing this whole presentation, right, to go through. But Control-Tab cycles through the open views, and Control-Shift-Tab goes the other way. All right, so levels, am I allowed to go over, or is that not allowed? Okay, well, it's counting back up now, so maybe it doesn't matter. All right, so levels, there's just a couple more. If you guys want to leave, I won't be offended. There's a couple more I'd love to share with you guys. So here's the levels. One thing that I like to do is I like to have some top of footing levels. And what we probably don't notice in these level properties is that you can toggle these boxes over here to be a building story or not. So this is a structural level. I don't want it to really print. I just want to use it for things. So now I've toggled this property, and now I can set up a view filter based on that. So you can go into your view filters, levels, anything toggled with structural on and building story off, take it away, put it in your view template, and now all those levels won't be on your sections. And then this was my last random list if we had time, but we don't. There's a ton of things in the handout. You guys have contributed a lot of things, and I want to thank you for that, and thank you for coming. So did you guys get at least one golden nugget? Yeah? Okay. Great. So if you think of something awesome, email me, and maybe I'll do another one of these next year and include it. So fill out your surveys, enjoy the party. Thanks for coming, and I'll see you next year.